Right, so a massive Israeli mistake in the making could hand Iran a big win, is the claim I'm making. And in fact, it's not simply down to one mistake, but a further mistake on top of the one they've been making for the last month now. Despite some Western outlets cheering what they claim to be a big blow to Iran, the opposite, if Israel continued down their present path, will almost certainly come to pass. And what we're talking about here is the destabilisation of Syria, as we now pass the 1 month mark since the fall of the Assad regime. As we know, Israel has been seizing territory in Syria, taking control of water supplies to both Syria and Jordan, but they aren't the only ones making a mistake here, actually. Turkey, from the north, is still engaged in war on the Syrian Kurds, which is upsetting Israel, US allies as the Kurds are, and Turkey is disgusted with Israel seizing territory and is telling them to get out. Instead, both nations are now seemingly on a collision course to make war on each other, in Syria as that would be, a massive destabilisation of the new regime under the former al-Qaeda headchoppers of HTS, who are destabilising enough as they embark on instigating Sharia Law in Syria now, it seems. And on top of that, Iran themselves are warning of terrorist uprisings in Syria too. But if an allied Syria to Iran is no longer possible, a destabilised one can be seen to be to their advantage too. And ultimately it is Israel's continued incursion into Syria, as well as Turkey's, that is driving this now. Right, so this is a picture of many constituent parts. On the one hand, as many Syrians and people around the world are celebrating a month since the fall of Assad, the reality of HTS leadership has not necessarily been all positive. Sure, commercial flights are returning to Damascus now. Life on the face of it in Syria is returning to normal. But the regime change is overtly pro-Israel, anti-Iran, are made up of disparate terrorist groups, hardline extremists who practice Sharia law, and you can't help but feel a lot of this celebrating is going to be quite short-lived, just as if HTS were left to their own devices, really. Al-Qaeda in government as they are. It should be terrifying the world, but instead we're led to believe this is cause for celebration. And frankly, there's no way I'm celebrating that. The Syrian people should be left to their own devices to shape their own future. And with new leader Ahmed al-Shara, better known as al-Jilani, saying elections will now be 4 years away, that is not something coming anytime soon. The fall of Assad, though, is being touted as a huge loss to Iran more than anything in Western media right now. Never mind who has actually taken over. Where the Iranian leadership have largely dismissed the fall of Syria as not a massive blow to them, rubbishing claims that Hezbollah need them, that Iran needs no proxies, as the West keeps calling them, that they are self-determinizing. Certainly Iran was using Syria as a route supply aid to the Lebanese group. That's a matter of fact, and given HTS's staunch anti-Iranian sentiment, that is now cut off. Therefore, it's no surprise the likes of the New York Times, as one example, are splashing a big piece, not behind their usual paywall, reporting on the words of Iranian Brigadier General Behrouz Bati, saying the fall of Syria was a huge blow to Iran, because putting the boot into America's biggest boogeyman is always going to sell well in America. The mistake, therefore, and the gift to Iran in which case, the win for them, would be to cock up that new regime in Syria, which suits Western interests and press so well at this moment in time. So cue Israel and Turkey. Netanyahu and Erdogan, two idiots about to have a clash in Syria and hand Iran a win. Israel, as we know, has continued to encroach into Syria. Al-Jilani has complained of this to the UN. He's complained of this to Donald Trump even. He must be quite desperate. But he's told Israel to leave, but they've done no such thing, of course, still pressing onwards into Syrian territory, emboldened by the fact Al-Jilani refuses to fight them, wants to be their friend, and they really don't seem to care less. He was a useful tool for them to depose Assad. Now he's just in the way of the Greater Israel doctrine, it seems. But frankly, with al-Jilani refusing to fight Israel, Greater Israel is what Syria has already become in all but name. But then there is Turkey coming into the equation as well, pushing into northern Syria, fighting the Kurds, using mercenaries and proxies in the Syrian National Army. Not the same thing as the actual Syrian army, to avoid confusion. But the Kurds, unlike al-Jilani, do have Israeli support, likely because they are allied to the US. And between the two, they control Syria's vast eastern oil fields. Israel has taken a swipe at Turkey for destabilising northern Syria, in their words. Turkey has had a go at Israel and told them to get out of Syria, and where Israel are encroaching into Syrian territory from the south and Turkey from the north, the likelihood of them eventually meeting and coming to blows is now being regarded as a greater and more likely immediate threat for Israel than any clash with Iran now. And Iran have been number one enemy for years, so it really is saying something. This is the potential biggest warning yet of a war between Israel and Turkey erupting. An Israeli report from an internal government committee, the Nagel committee, not sure how it's pronounced, has apparently stated the need for the country to prepare and be ready for this to come to pass. Clearly, getting out of Syria is not on the cards, therefore. The Nagel committee has made several assertions and recommendations, claims that Turkey have Ottoman Empire-era ambitions of conquest now, which is, well, that's hypocrisy on steroids, isn't it? There is a risk that certain Syrian factions would side with Turkey against Israel, it says, underlining the disparate numbers of different groups that live in Syria and the differing politics and religious divides between them, and the need for significant leadership, talented leadership, to be able to bring them all together and live together peacefully, but also the inherent vulnerability in how easily Syrian society could be upended and destabilised. Regional instability, according to the committee, could make Turkey a bigger threat to Israel than Iran now. And as such, they recommend increasing defence spending in Israel by 15 billion Israeli shekels over 5 years. Not sure where they're getting that cash from with an economy on its backside as Israel's is. I think we can guess, though. As well as bolstering their military tech and border security, which is a laugh since they seem hell-bent on expanding their borders as far as they inhumanly can. Now, the really interesting part of all this, though, is that that report from the Nagel committee was sent to Netanyahu, Defence Minister Israel Katz, and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich on the 6th of December. That was 2 days before Assad's regime fell. So already they were eyeing up potential conflict with Turkey in the north, who have a decades-long beef with the Kurds. The fighting in the north not unique to last month post-Assad, but evidently plans to push into Syria and potentially come into contact with Turkish forces appear to have always been the plan, even before Assad actually fell, and before al-Jilani himself had even reached Damascus and got his feet under Assad's favourite desk. From the Turkish perspective, they've had issues with Israel for a while, allegedly. The trouble with a leader like Erdogan is that you can't ever be sure whose side he's on. Because for as much as he's attacked Israel verbally over the invasion and the genocide of Gaza and Lebanon, he's still ensuring Israel gets an oil supply. And if he really wanted to hurt Israel, would he just turn the tap off? He's also weighed in, however, in a televised speech regarding Israel, though, and the situation they are now driving in Syria, allied to HTS as Turkey is, aiding them in the drawing up of a new constitution, as they are, but completely tin-eared to his own role in fighting there as well, it seems, in which he said, "With the epic revolution that took part in our neighbour Syria, a new era has begun in this country and in our region. We see that the new Syrian administration is trying to build a Syria based on the territorial integrity and unity of the country, and is determined to do so. We will not consent to the disintegration of Syria or the disruption of its unitary structure under any guise. If we see a risk in this regard, we will take the necessary steps swiftly. The only fate awaiting those who choose terror and violence is to be buried in the ground with their weapons. I am saying this openly. No power can prevent this. Turkey has demonstrated many times its uncompromising will to protect its survival and security. If it comes to that, we can come suddenly one night once again." All very foreboding stuff. For all of his pontificating, though, he's part of the problem, warring away against the Kurdish forces in the north. And whilst these groups are not HTS friendly, they are Israel friendly, thus souring relations again, and therefore the odds of coming to blows between Israel and Turkey ends up increasing on another front too. Israel has called out the attacks on the Kurds. They've demanded an international response to Turkey attacking them. Pig Israel, when the international community should be sanctioning their backside through the floor for literally committing genocide. But a brass neck the size Israel carries around never ever seems to slow them down, does it? To Iran's credit, though, if we come to them now, they've called all of this war of words out and urged all sides to calm down, because the right to self-determination for the people of Syria should be what matters most of all. The trouble is, with Israel widely being seen as having designs on occupying a good chunk of Syria for some time to come, the Greater Israel ideology, Turkey wanting to shape Syria their way, and with al-Qaeda running the show for who knows how long, 4 years is the claim at this moment in time, when do the people of Syria get a say in all of this exactly? Syria looks set on becoming an almighty mess, as we've seen all too often happen in the past when regimes fall, and help putting their nation back together for its people, by the people who helped destabilise this country to begin with, never ever ends up happening, does it? Israel and Turkey going to war with Syria as the battlefield is not going to help them one iota. And when both of those nations have beef with Iran too, their own warring and their epic stupidity over that could all end up being to Iran's advantage. They're used to working within a destabilised Middle East thanks to decades of Western interference. If links to Lebanon have been severed currently, the more destabilised Syria becomes, the more Iran and Hezbollah could be able to use that to their advantage. And that again comes back to that New York Times splash, the opinion being given to them by General Esbati, because it is he who has also said that. Iran would benefit if Syria descended into chaos because Iran knew how to thrive and secure its interests in a turbulent landscape. Israel and Turkey could, if they go to war, be doing Iran a massive solid. Maybe they want to think about that then, but I doubt they will. I don't think thinking comes naturally to the likes of Netanyahu and Erdogan. Meanwhile, Israel has gone into absolute meltdown over the last day or so as the Houthis of Yemen, frustrating the living daylights out of Israel and all of their allies because they are making themselves an ever bigger problem, and nobody can seem to touch them to any meaningful degree, have launched their biggest attack on Israel ever, getting even further north than ever before as well, and have allegedly now managed to finally cause some damage to a US aircraft carrier, no less, into the bargain as well. Get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't already done so to help support the channel and ensure you don't miss out on future content as well, which always comes out on a daily basis. And I will therefore catch you on the next vid, I hope. Cheers, folks.